12 million people watched a stone door close in an Irish cliff. They were arguing about the wrong mystery. The cliff itself has confused scientists for 300 years, and most of what we now know about it was written down in the last 7. This is what the records actually show. A letter arrived at the Royal Society in London in 1693. Sir Richard Bulkeley described rock columns on the northern coast of Ireland, fitted together so precisely that the joints between them barely admitted a knife blade. Whatever was on that coast did not fit anything Europe had a word for. What Bulkeley did not mention is that he had never been there. Everything came from a Cambridge scholar's field notes and conversations with a bishop. 2 more papers followed the next year. Neither author had seen the columns in person. For 50 years, every academic argument about what those columns were happened between men who had only seen them on paper. They split into camps, one side insisting the structure had been carved by hand and abandoned in antiquity, the other holding to an older Irish tradition that a giant named Finn McCool had laid a stone bridge from this coast to one across the sea. The men in London thought that part was folklore. They had reasons. They were also wrong, and it would take 3 centuries to find out how wrong. A woman from Dublin broke the stalemate. Her name was Susanna Drury. In the spring of 1739, she took her materials onto a boat, had herself rowed up against the cliffs, and stayed there for several months. 2 finished watercolors came out of that summer. Drury worked on a coast that had a reputation for taking experienced fishermen and not giving them back. She worked alone. In 1740, the Dublin Society awarded her £25, the first time the Society had ever recognized a woman, and the first time it had recognized landscape painting. The engravings traveled across Europe. What naturalists finally saw didn't fit any category they had. This is the point where I should name the place. It's the Giant's Causeway in County Antrim on the northern edge of Ireland. 40,000 basalt columns walking down out of the cliffs and into the sea. The bridge in the old Irish story leads to a specific destination, a small island in the Inner Hebrides called Staffa, uninhabited, 82 miles north, with hexagonal columns of the same dark basalt. The Irish had been pointing at that connection for at least 1,000 years before any map could confirm it. The story said the bridge was broken. Nobody yet knew how right that was. 1768 closed the first big debate. A French geologist named Nicolas Desmarais argued that what stood on the Antrim coast wasn't carved, wasn't built, wasn't anything but volcanic. Lava that had erupted, pooled, and cooled. He had it almost right. He was missing one number. For the next 250 years, geologists studied the causeway the way you study a finished object. Generations of them stood on those columns. None could feel the heat that had made them. They noted, with mild interest, that only about 60% of the columns are perfect hexagons. The rest have 4, 5, 7, or 8 sides in patterns nobody could predict. What none of them could tell you was the temperature at which the lava had actually cracked into those shapes. The temperature determines everything. It sets how wide each column is, why some segments lock into the next, with a ball and socket fit so clean it looks machined. Every postcard, every textbook explanation of how the causeway formed was correct in outline and wrong in the part that mattered most. There are basalt columns elsewhere. Devil's Tower in Wyoming comes closest. None walk into the sea. The answer arrived in 2018. A scientist named Jan Lavallee at the University of Liverpool spent more than 10 years figuring out how to ask the question in a form that could be tested. He built something the field had never built, an apparatus that could heat basalt samples and stress them under conditions matching the original flows. The cracks he found opened between 1,544 and 1,634 degrees Fahrenheit, 840 to 890 Celsius. The columns had not split while the lava was still liquid. They had split well after the rock had become rock, while it was continuing to lose heat to the air around it. Over a decade, on a problem that school books present as solved by the time of Lavoisier. The temperature wasn't hidden in difficult data, it was hidden in a question nobody had quite formed. Every drawing of the causeway you have ever seen was made before anyone knew the heat at which the rock had chosen its geometry. 2.5 centuries of looking, 10 years of asking the right question. The bigger break came in 2022. Dr. Mike Sims at the Ulster Museum published the first new model for how the causeway formed in over 80 years. The standard explanation, going back to the 1940s, said that a slow lava flow had filled an existing river valley. Sims read the rock differently. The valley wasn't a valley, it was a collapse. A magma chamber beneath the future causeway had drained itself in an eruption elsewhere, and the surface above sank into the void. Fresh lava then flooded that depression while its walls were still warm, which means the causeway did not form across long ages. It formed across a window of days, possibly hours. The old story had always implied something sudden. What you see, the staircase, the honeycomb top, the columns marching into the Atlantic, is a single event. Then it sat untouched for the rest of geological time, waiting to be photographed. 80 years of settled geology, revised in one paper. Our timeline for the site was off by a factor of about 10,000. Now, about the clip, the 30 seconds that 12 million people watched. It's fake. Almost certainly. But the cliff in the clip is the causeway. And the clip, for all its dishonesty, was looking at something that turns out to be real. People who visit that coast assume the geology is closed. Most of what they're looking at was rewritten in the last 7 years. And then there is the matter of the bridge. The Irish were specific about it. They said 2 places, the Causeway and Staffa, had once been joined, and the broken ends are what we walk on now. Modern geology says something close. The 2 weren't a single road, but they are products of the same vast volcanic episode, the one that tore Europe and North America apart while opening the Atlantic Ocean. The same mantle plume left matching columns on both sides of what is now sea. The people telling the old story had no model of plate tectonics. They had 2 coasts that looked the same and one ocean between them, and they reached a conclusion the science needed 2 more centuries to catch up to. How a culture without geology arrived at a story that the geology eventually backed is not a question anyone has cleanly answered. There are still pieces of this rock nobody has explained. The ball and socket joints that fit certain segments precisely. The 40% of pillars that refuse to be hexagons, no matter how the math is set up. The honest answer is, we don't know yet. If that's true of a UNESCO site with 3 centuries of papers and a gift shop at the entrance, what's true of the cliffs without parking lots? The viral clips that came and went and never got a proper second look? Somewhere on that northern coast, the wind is still moving across 40,000 columns that took less than a week to form 60 million years ago. And 82 miles further north, the other half is still there, still waiting for someone to notice that the story about both was never finished.